What a joy it is for me to speak to you today. I want us to consider a verse in Matthew's Gospel. In the first two pages of the New Testament, there is an important message laid to us by Matthew, the Gospel writer. He is talking about Jesus, the story of Jesus. He is connecting Jesus with Abraham. He is connecting Jesus with David. Just for the readers to know, Jesus is the son of Abraham. He is the son of David. And there is an interesting thing that Matthew does quite a lot, again and again. The first time where you see is in 123, where the name Jesus, connecting that with Emmanuel. And there is a portion from the Old Testament, Isaiah chapter 7, echoed in Matthew's Gospel 123. What Matthew says is, all this happened so that it will be fulfilled. What Isaiah chapter 7 said, actually it was said in the context of King Ahaz. But now Matthew is rereading those texts in the light of Jesus. Matthew is seeing in those already fulfilled promises a type of Jesus, a figure of Jesus, reading Old Testament in the light of the person Jesus. And he again goes on in chapter 2, verse 5 also, with regard to the place of Jesus' birth, Bethlehem. Again, another quote from the Old Testament. He is bringing Micah and he says, this happened so that what Micah said is fulfilled. And continuing in chapter 2:15. So you see, we have already seen 123, it will be fulfilled. Again 2:5, again a quote from the Old Testament. In chapter 2, verse 15, it says about, again a quote from the Old Testament, Hosea chapter 11. Primarily that quote was about people of Israel in Egypt, and God will bring them out of Egypt, the people of Israel. Now that is also reread in the person of Jesus. As Jesus was taken to Egypt by Joseph and Mary because of the existing prevalent situation by Herod, Matthew is saying that also happened. Joseph, Mary went to Egypt, and the same Jesus will be out of Egypt. Out of the Egypt I will call my son. What is said by Hosea in chapter 11 is applied to Jesus. My dear people of God, there is an interesting thing to learn here. What do we read in the Old Testament? I know there are a lot of stories, small stories, but we should read the Bible as a big story. The big story that commenced in Genesis 1, finishing in Revelation, and the storyline is building towards Jesus. The 39 books of the Old Testament is building towards the person Jesus. Now, when we preach from the Old Testament, we teach from the Old Testament, it's very important for us to have this in our mind. The stories, the minute stories, what you see in the Old Testament may not be about Jesus. Every story may not be about Jesus, but it is building to Jesus. That is why Matthew is rereading those prophecies in Hosea, in Isaiah, in Micah. Micah's prediction was exactly about Bethlehem, but the other two was very different. Now there is one quote in chapter 2, verse 17, 18 that I want us to consider in the next couple of minutes. This is about, in Bethlehem, there is a big cry because babies under the age of 2 are killed. Herod has given an order that everybody, babies under the age 2, has to be killed. Now here is when another portion from Jeremiah chapter 31 verse 15, the original context of that verse is when people of Israel was taken to captivity in Babylon, there in Ramah, the place Ramah is very significant because that is a place where the people of Israel from Jerusalem were gathered and they were deported to Babylon. Ramah is a place of transit, so to say. In Jeremiah chapter 40, verse 1 to 4, that is very clear. People were brought to Ramah and from there they were taken to Babylon. Now, in Ramah, there is a big cry by Rachel. What is she crying about? She is crying about her descendants. What is the subject matter here? Descendants, the promised children who were supposed to enjoy the presence of God in Jerusalem, who were supposed to enjoy the protection of God, presence of God, promises of God. These three things are lost. They are crossing Rama and they are going to Babylon, where the promises of God is hindered. You are in a foreign land. How is this story connected to Jesus? Very interesting what Matthew does. Matthew is connecting Jesus with the people of Israel. Just like they were in Egypt, chapter 2:15, Jesus will come out of Egypt. What is the next event in the life of people of Israel? First is they were brought out from Egypt. Second major event is exile. Now for sure Matthew is following that order. Out of Egypt comes Jesus like Israel. Now out of exile, just like prophets have promised, they will be brought out. Jeremiah chapter 31:15 is where Rachel weeps, but in the following verses, Yahweh says, don't cry, I will bring them back. Just like that, now Jesus is in the foreign land. The promise is, Rachel is weeping in Ramah, but after 2 verse, in chapter 2 verse 22, Joseph is returning back to the promises of God. He is coming to Nazareth. Again, that also happened so that the promise of God is fulfilled. Jesus is back to the purpose of God. Let me encourage you, my dear people of God. What do we learn here? Everything in our life happens as per the divine will and plan. Sometimes it may so seem that things are out of our control. When Jesus was taken to Egypt, people might have thought, what a tragedy this is. But things are happening so that promises, prophecies are fulfilled. This is the way to read the Old Testament. Read Old Testament in the light of Jesus. Also see, when Rachel is weeping in Ramah, there is an answer for that cry. Jesus returned just like Israel returned. Just like Moses returned in Exodus 4, Jesus is also back to the promise. God is going to take us back to the promises of God, to the purposes of God. Let's trust the word of God for that. God bless you all.